Thank you, Alistair. I was intrigued by this assignment, and I think the thing that set me off was your sentence talking about the kind of things that government guidance describes cities as versus the question of cities that are edgy or cities and places for sort of a random encounter. And it got me to thinking about neighborhoods and the processes of neighborhood renewal and neighborhood change. And I decided to do a little chronicle of edgy neighborhoods in Manhattan during my lifetime to give you a sense about how the cycles of renewal and evolution change. And this is the West Village, which when I was a teenager, I was reading all about Bob Dylan and the Beats going to the West Village. By the time I got of an age to travel there, it was full of very intelligent bankers and magazine editors. This is Soho, which when I was just entering university was the place to be. And by the time I graduated university, it had moved to being the place for art galleries. And by the time I graduated from graduate school, it was the place for the Banana Republic and the Gap. This is Tribeca, the neighborhood just below that, where a great neighborhood of lofts, which really turned into million-dollar flats, but had a great period of loft parties in the early 1980s. And the Talking Heads lived there. This is the East Village, which in the 1980s was really a place where you took your life in your hands to go there, but by the 1990s had become the place where the New York equivalent of city boys and bankers would go to live. And so this process of discovery and colonization continues, but now it's in Brooklyn because Manhattan's all filled up. And this is a neighborhood in Brooklyn beginning that process with the sort of the first wave of discovery, edginess, and hipness, which is thrift shops and people living behind storefronts. So I began to think about this whole question and the stages of change within the city, and borrowing from Andras Dewani, who coined the bits in parentheses, I began to think about the different stages of change. And I think the first stage is the scary, cool stage of a neighborhood with urban pioneers who are risk oblivious. The second stage is edgy, it's young, arty, alternative, risk tolerant. Then a neighborhood is discovered, and you see investors and people who are viewing hipness as a consumption activity moving in. They're risk aware, and they like a bit of change. And then the final period would be so over it, families, professionals, the risk averse. And I think I've seen this in enough cities and enough countries to see these cycles of change and postulate it as a theory of evolution. What makes a neighborhood or a city, part of a city, enter into this cycle? And I think there are four things. It's that it's affordable. People see a gap in terms of being able to get into a place where they don't have to pay so much rent, that they don't have leisure time to explore alternative ideas, to participate in art or music or something like that. It's accessible to the rest of the city, needs to be connected. It's adaptable. People like spaces that can be easily changed and adapted. That's why storefronts and lofts have been popular for so long. And it's attractive. It's authentic and attractive, a place that people like to change. And that's our headquarters in Shoreditch, which once was in the edgy category. I think it's probably permanently discovered because the housing stock doesn't really move to having families. So I think this is part of a sort of organic process of change. And as designers, I think we need to think about change as being something that we that is managed. And we sit sort of in this diagram at that level, the governance and management level. And I stole this idea of rates of change in cities and towns from Stuart Brand, who wrote a great book called How Buildings and Learn, but have begun to try to adapt it as a lens for our thinking about working in historic town centers and in regeneration projects. And I think that keeping things edgy and keeping a place for evolution in a city is about not really hardwiring at the top of that pyramid. That what you want to do is hardwire the city's relationship with nature, culture, and infrastructure, but create spaces that accommodate commerce and changes in commerce and fashion. And so whether a storefront is a bodega or some guys living there making art, or the next year an art gallery, it's still the same space. And you want to create spaces that can go through those transformations in a sort of loose fit model. And thinking about accommodating and creating cities that can both be hip and healthy and safe is about understanding that process of change and designing to that process of change. I guess I'd say, should we strive to make new places hip or edgy? And maybe I just don't have enough confidence in my own belief that I can do that, in my own abilities that I can do that. But I often find that we try to be hip, but we're missing the mark when we do it. So I think that people are the things that create edgy or safe or hip places, and what we need to be doing is creating a framework for that. And so place making ought to strive to be long-lived, attractive, authentic, adaptable, accessible, and connected. And so this is not a very hip place, but it's a place that's useful, it's connected, and it works for people. And that's what I think we probably ought to be doing, and leaving the sort of how the city evolves and neighborhood evolves over time, both to management and to the process of people discovering it, finding opportunities, finding sweet spots in the market to take advantage of that, and allowing it to move forward. Because I don't think, at least I don't think I'm good enough an urban designer to actually do more than create a vessel for those kind of things happening. And architecture that strives to do so, often ends up looking not hip, but so over it after a little while. All right, thanks.
Thank you very much.